Thank you very much, councillors, members of senior staff, members of the press, members of the gallery, and the clergy. A warm welcome to you, and I declare open the November meeting of Temora Shire Council and bid you all a warm welcome. This meeting is being recorded and will be placed on Temora Shire Council's webpage for public information. All present today are reminded that whilst we're speaking, that we agree that our view and our comments are being recorded and published. And we're also reminded that if and when we speak, we're of course to be respectful to others and use appropriate language. And Temora Shire Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures during this meeting, which of course doesn't happen in this chamber. Now I warmly welcome on behalf of Council the Reverend Derek Yu, who is representing the Temora Christian Leaders Group, who will deliver our opening prayer. Thank you, Reverend.
Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, thank you for our councillors. Thank you that you have appointed each one to govern and serve the people of the Temora Shire. We ask that you give our mayor and councillors wisdom and courage to make difficult decisions today that benefit our region before they benefit themselves or their friends. Help them to serve us well, and please help us to honour and respect them. We pray for those in our region grieving the loss of loved ones. We pray for those sick among us now. We pray for those dying. We pray for the lonely and the outcast among us. We pray for those weighed down with guilt, those bound up with pride. We pray for our farmers throughout this harvest season. We pray for workers enjoying their work or struggling to find work, for businesses searching for workers, for those unable to work. We pray for those in our nursing homes and hospitals. We pray for our school students and teachers. We pray for our medical carers, emergency services, and policemen and women. We pray for those hoping to change things for the better, who want to build things for the future, for those with energy and enthusiasm and a vision for just how prosperous our region can be. We pray for all people in the Temora Shire. We ask for each man and woman and child in our region, for you to extend to us all your tender grace, mercy, and peace. Lord, please bless these men and women here this afternoon. Give them personal insight into our benefits, so into their motivations and convictions. Help them to be honest and direct and dignified for our benefit and theirs. We ask that all people in our region may be helped by our council to live peaceful and quiet lives. And this we ask in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend. It's always a special way to start a meeting, so thank you. We go on to declaration of interests. Any declarations that anyone wishes to declare at this point? Councillor McLaren.
Non-pecuniary interest in item 19.4 in the confidential papers.
Thank you. Councillor Bushell.
Item 16.4. I don't know if it's non-pecuniary or pecuniary. To be honest, it's to do with my in-law.
Thank you. I also will be declaring an interest in 16.4 of the business paper. Any other declarations? Councillor Judd.
Just the non-pecuniary interest in the application for the Harry Park community for the Christmas tree road closing.
Thank you, Councillor Judd. Thank you, Councillor Good.
I'd also like to declare an interest in 16.4.
Thank you. So no further declaration at this stage. Remember, you can certainly do that later if you've forgotten just now. Confirmation, please, councillors, of the last minutes of Temora Shire Council held on the 20th of October. Is someone prepared to move that they be received as true and correct record, please? Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Councillor Bushell moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Matters arising, please, Mr. General Manager.
No, there's nothing, Mr. Mayor. With the there is nothing except there is an item later in the business paper relating to the minutes of the last meeting.
Yes.
And that will be dealt with at that time.
Yep, thank you. Now, we'll proceed on, Councillor, before we go to the mayoral minute, of which there is a very, very important one before you. We are going to receive a public presentation from our auditor. And we actually have with us today from our auditors, Crow, Mrs. Danielle McKenzie. So a warm welcome to you, Mrs. McKenzie, and councillors, staff and members of the gallery. We're very interested to hear your address. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for having me here today. I'll just sort of start by thanking the finance team for their efforts and cooperation throughout the audit process. It really is very much appreciated, and there is a lot of work that goes into the background in the preparation of the financial statements. So I just wanted to start by thanking them for their efforts again this year. In terms of the general purpose financial statements this year, we have issued a modified audit opinion on the general purpose financial statements. This qualification is in relation to the non-recognition of the rural firefighting equipment, which is referred to as the RFS Red Fleet assets. What I will note though is that this is an except for opinion. So what we're saying there is, except for the non-recognition of the RFS assets, the financial statements do present fairly and in accordance with the accounting standards and the records of council. So whilst it is a modified audit opinion, we don't have any issues outside of the non-recognition of the RFS assets. The audit opinion itself was signed on the 31st of October, which is in accordance with the statutory deadline and the requirements. I'll just briefly go through what is largely the content of the conduct report and just give a bit of an overview of the income statement and the financial position for the year. In terms of council's income statement and the operating results, so council's rates and annual charges revenue was 6.1 million, an increase of 5% on the previous financial year. Your grants and contributions revenue of 16.1 million was an increase of 11% on the previous financial year. That's largely due to the amounts received for the local roads and community infrastructure funding, the Stronger Country Communities Grant and the Swimming Pool Grant. Which brings us to the operating result from continuing operations, which was 9.1 million, which was 0.7 million improvement on the previous financial year. In terms of council's cash position, council's cash and cash equivalents was 4.1 million at 30 June 2022. And that was a net increase in cash of 2 million on the previous financial year. Council's unrestricted cash also increased by about 600,000. So it was in the previous financial year it was 220,000, and it's increased to 800,000 at 30 June 2022. In terms of council's debt, council has borrowings of 3.1 million, which includes an additional 1.2 million of new borrowings which were drawn down in the current financial year. In terms of council's performance, we look at it largely in terms of the key performance ratios as set by the Office of Local Government. So there's 6 key ratios which we look at for all councils, of which council meets 5 of those 6 key ratios. And what I will note for Temora is that all of those ratios, all 6 of those ratios have trended positively in comparison to the previous financial year, so they're heading in the right direction. In terms of council's operating performance ratio, which measures how well council's contained its operating expenditure within its operating revenue, the benchmark set by the Office of Local Government is 0. So the operating performance ratio has increased this year and sits at 4.38%. And the increase is largely in relation to the receipt of 75% of the financial assistance grant 2023 allocation received during 2022. Council's own source operating revenue ratio, which shows the degree to which council relies on external funding sources such as grants and contributions. The benchmark set here by the Office of Local Government is 60%. So council's own source operating revenue ratio has increased slightly compared to the previous financial year and currently sits at 54.7%, which is only just below the 60% benchmark set by the Office of Local Government. The next ratio is the unrestricted current ratio, which is specific to local government and represents council's ability to meet its short-term debts as and when they fall due. The benchmark that's been set by the Office of Local Government is greater than 1.5 times. So council's unrestricted current ratio has increased this year due to the increase in the unrestricted cash balance, which I mentioned previously, and it currently sits at 4.9 times. The debt service cover ratio, which measures the operating cash available to service council's debt. The benchmark set by the Office of Local Government is 2 times, and council currently sits at 17.48 times, so well above that benchmark. The next ratio is the rates and annual charges outstanding percentage, which assesses the impact that uncollected rates and annual charges has on council's liquidity and the adequacy of your debt recovery efforts that are in place. So the benchmark set by the Office of Local Government is less than 10% for a regional and rural council, and Temora's rates and annual charges outstanding percentage sits well below that at 2.99%. And has done, it's remained relatively consistent over the last 3 years, which is positive and is quite low considering that debt recovery efforts were stalled effectively during the COVID period. The last ratio is the cash expense cover ratio, which is a liquidity ratio which indicates the number of months council can continue paying for its immediate expenditure without requiring additional cash flow. So the Office of Local Government has set a benchmark of 3 months, and council's cash expense cover ratio has increased again this year and currently sits at 10.3 months, which is well above that benchmark. That's probably a high-level overview of the financial results for the year. Obviously, it's trending in the right direction and it's quite a positive result for council for the year. But happy to take any questions anyone has.
Thank you, Ms McKenzie, for that. Just in relation to the comment you made in relation to the RFS, in relation to the observations that you've made, that this council stands with the rest of our colleagues and a growing number that we stand firm in that position in not declaring that those assets. So I just thought I'd share that. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, just a question to the auditor, please. You mentioned that our cash balance at the moment's quite healthy because we've received some grant funding for this year somewhat prematurely. In your opinion, if that anomaly's taken out, do the ratios and positions still hold up favourably?
I haven't done a specific calculation without those amounts included, but obviously some of those ratios, would then fall back a little bit without that included. But at this point, it's hard to say whether they'll continue to get that advanced position of the financial assistance or grant, or at what point they'll pull it back and try and bring it back into line. But yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments, questions? If not, I do thank you, Mrs. McKenzie. You also noted that we have a very fine Director of Administration and Finance finance team, and you are spot on. Council firmly hold that view, and thank you very much for your kind appreciation of our team. So thank you very much. Well done to the Director, Administration and Finance, and please pass on Council's warm appreciation for their efforts. If there's no further comments or questions, thank you, Mrs. McKenzie, and we'll bid you farewell.
Thank you very much. See you later.
Thank you. Now, Council, let's go to the Merrill Minute. And you all should have a copy on your desks. A Merrill Minute, statewide roads emergency. We're all well aware of the Temora Shire, the Temora Shire has been hit by a seemingly relentless wave of flooding events in the past 12 months and beyond. And we are not alone. A total of 126 of New South Wales, 128 local government areas have had natural disaster declarations within the last 12 months, according to our President of Local Government New South Wales, Councillor Daria Turley AM. On the 3rd of November 2022, Local Government New South Wales declared a statewide roads emergency. The declaration, an urgent call for the New South Wales and federal governments to increase their existing road funding commitments in the wake of the floods, comes on the back of an estimated $2.5 billion in road damages and a collapse of the local and regional road network. I call on Temora Shire Council to show our unanimous support for this move and wholeheartedly endorse the Local Government New South Wales declaration of a statewide road emergency. The declaration has already been publicly supported by our peak regional body, the Country Mayors Association of New South Wales. As part of the statewide roads emergency, Local Government New South Wales and the Country Mayors Association of New South Wales are calling for 1. An acceleration and significant increase in funding for the $1.1 billion of Fixing Local Roads and Fixing Country Bridges program from the New South Wales Government. 2. A boost to roadblock grant funding to compensate for the damage to the regional road network from the federal government. 3. New funding to provide councils with plant machinery and skilled workers to expedite road repairs from the federal government. We have faced and may continue to face an unprecedented and unrelenting series of natural disasters that has seen residents and business owners cleaning up again and again, people isolated, workers unable to get to work, and students unable to get to training or school. Add to this our very real and immediate concern for our farming community. The latest rain events have hit at a critical time. Winter crops are ready to be harvested and the window for planting summer crops is rapidly closing. Livestock are ready to go to sale. The local and regional road network is critically enabling infrastructure. It is absolutely vital to our farmers and graziers and the key to keep affordable food on the table across New South Wales and beyond. Our road network and the road network of shires across the state have disastrous damage. We are facing a task that is beyond the reasonable scope of any local government authority. We face an unprecedented disaster that requires an unprecedented response. Our community needs help. Other regional and rural communities across the state and beyond need help. Council acknowledges the initial funding from the New South Wales Government and we say thank you. We need to support our peak bodies in their declaration of a statewide road emergency. This is an emergency and it is time to seek help. And by supporting this Merrill Minute, we're endorsing that I write to the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Anthony Albanese MP, and the Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Dominic Perrottet, and pleading for immediate action. Thank you to the Honourable Michael McCormack, our Federal Member for Riverina, and the Honourable Steph Cook, the State Member for Cootamundra, for supporting Temora Shire, and we look forward to their continued assistance during this critical time. And councillors, I have a recommendation there for council to consider that Temora Shire Council joins with Local Government New South Wales and the Country Mayors Association of New South Wales in declaring a statewide road emergency, and further that we formally write to the Prime Minister and the Premier to formally articulate our position. And I am happy to move. Councillor McLaren has seconded the motion. Thank you. Is there discussion on the motion? Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I agree with your support to your motion, but in all my times on council, this is probably the first time in all our disasters over the years that there's been a statewide disaster with our roads. We've always been one area or another at different times, but this year, this showing up has just been damaged right through from one end to the other. And I think, it's just very unusual, and we're going to need a lot of work a lot of money to fix the things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Judd. Couldn't agree more. I'm seeing nods around the chamber, and that's very, very true. Well, councillors, if there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried unanimously. And thank you, councillors, very much for your support. Councillors, let's go to our business paper. Starting on page 11, the minutes of the Assets and Operations Committee of Temora Shire Council. They commence on page 11, and the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, is the chairman.
Mr Mayor, I move the report be received.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor has moved that the report is received. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Oliver. Thank you. Moved. Seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, do you have anything you wish to highlight in the report?
No, Mr Mayor, not at this stage.
Thank you. Councillors, any comments or questions? If not, is someone prepared to move the report and its recommendations, please? Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Seconded for the motion, Councillor Judd. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. And declare the motion carried. Thank you. Over to page 49, the minutes of the Economic Development and Visitations Committee report. And Councillor McLaren is the chairman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that the report be received.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren has moved the report be received. Is there a second for the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Bushell. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There's just one item in the report and it is as read.
Thank you. Councillors, any comments, questions of the Economic Development Committee report? If not, is someone prepared to move that those minutes and recommendations be adopted, please? Thank you, Councillor Judd. Seconder, Councillor Reinhold. Thank you. Moved, seconded. Further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very, very much. Councillors, let's go over to page 53. Delegates' reports. Do we have any delegates' reports, please? Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I went to the Springdale Progress Association meeting last Sunday night, and everything's going pretty well out there, except they've got a few issues with the septic system, which I spoke to the director about. But it's all brought about, I think, by the extra traffic that's been diverted through there because of the flood situation. It's sort of not quite coping as well as it might, plus the wet weather as well. So when the weather dries up, we can perhaps address that issue. They did have a compliment for the Temora Shire Council, particularly the roads section. They said compared to other councils, our roads are in fairly good shape. And I can attest to that because I went up to Towabingo at the weekend and some of the roads in other councils aren't terribly good, particularly in the Tumut Shire, whatever they call themselves up there now. So that was very nice to hear, so I'll pass it on to the engineering section. Also went to the Rural Museum meeting last Wednesday night, I think it was. I've lost track of the days, sorry, it might have been 2 weeks ago. And all's going very well out there, all in readiness for their 50-year anniversary. They've got quite a few more attractions this year just to amplify the whole situation. So everything's going pretty good. And that's about it, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks, Councillor Oliver. And it is nice to hear comments, and again, when we talk to other mayors and councillors across the state, you realise that we are blessed, comparatively speaking. It's talking to the Mayor of Cabon the other day, who's, as you know, Mayor Kevin Beattie is going through some terrible times, and it's great that we keep in regular touch with him, but it's a very emotional journey for everybody, and it does make you realise how blessed that we are, that's for sure. Thank you. I go to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just an update on Australia Day. Amongst all your papers, you should receive this yellow envelope. It has got all the entrants for the categories for Australia Day, the Student of the Year, Junior Student of the Year and Event of the Year. So could you all have a look at those and vote accordingly to who you think, and get them back to Council as soon as you can, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I go now to Councillor Reinhold.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Arts Centre had their management committee meeting, and I just want to say Denise Clements is fantastic. She's a real dynamo, and the meeting was attended by a lot of council staff, so we were wondering what was happening, but they were there to tell us all about Drench, which is going to be
I beg your pardon?
Drench. It's going to be 1 month of culture, so there'll be live music and all over the Shire. They're going to have an open day at the Arts Centre with workshops and demonstrations, and hopefully it'll become an annual thing. I also, at Teabeg, little shout out, they've got their Christmas fair, December the 9th, and the tea raffles are on again, so we've got Temora floor covering and, I want to say Tim Maguire electrical, but it's not. So yes, everyone jump online and buy your tickets, great prizes, and they'll be drawn at the Christmas fair. Also, if you're thinking of giving gift vouchers, we've got the Why Leave Town gift cards, so just good Christmas gift for staff. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Reinhold, and thank you for, again, it's lovely to hear these warm comments. I know that all councillors hear on a regular basis about staff, and of course the manager of the Arts Centre, we are hearing consistently positive things, so it's lovely of you to share that with us. Councillor, just in terms of further delegates' reports, I just wanted to mention, when we're in Sydney at the Country Mayors, one thing that I've been leading this subcommittee of a scholarship, and I'm just so very, very pleased that the members have adopted that to give to the winner of the Rural Regional AR Blewett Award. So that council can then determine who they'd like to offer this $10,000 scholarship to, a trainee or an apprentice, to assist them further advance their career in local government. So we're very excited to give that a go, and of course we'll review the protocols around that after 12 months. But it's they're sitting on this $100,000, and this is just one way that we can really help continue to grow our own. So I'm just tickled pink about that. To remind Council of Her Excellency the Governor of New South Wales, her visit, of course, she'll be meeting with us, available councillors and senior staff, on a round table at 3 o'clock next Friday, and then of course we'll have a civic reception in her honour here, at 6 p.m, where obviously we'll be here along with representatives of our other community groups across Temora Shire, and that will be a very special occasion. And it's so lovely that Her Excellency has reached out to us, wanting to come here, and she's arranging her office is arranging other visits with our schools and the Aviation Museum and other events. So we'll be able to put forward our feet, the best feet forward that we can, and we'll show Temora Shire in a very good light. I also just wanted to mention, councillors, in conclusion, the Oran Park Anglican College. Now, they've been in Temora Shire and still here today. We've had them for around a week. And coming out here, of course, to help Temora Shire, whether it's community groups, senior citizens, all different churches, gardening. It's just Meals on Wheels. And it was so lovely to host an afternoon tea with them here yesterday. And just that Year 10 students, their spirit of generosity is very overwhelming and very heartwarming. They wanted to sit in the councillors' chairs, and they did that. And we sat here for over an hour just talking about all different things and trying to seek their views, on various issues. And wow, how articulate but how caring that they are, and how welcome they feel in Temora Shire. And I just couldn't thank them enough on your behalf for what they've done and what they're doing to help our Temora Shire community, and just because they have a generous spirit. So I just wanted to simply get that on the record. So thank you very much. No further delegates. Councillor McLaren.
Just to mention, I went to the Rotary function on the 14th of November, where TADVAC hosted them round at the Art Centre for an evening of a meal and a painting evening. It was very successful. And early that evening, the General Manager had hosted the UA3 meeting, which was around an incredible success. Lots of people turned up with a lot of passion and enthusiasm, so I think that's going to be a positive thing in the future. And it was great to go to the Grants Commission and meet the commissioners here last week, I think it was. The 3 commissioners from Sydney had travelled out here, and they were very impressive, and I think they learn a bit from us as well as us learning from them. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. You're spot on, the Grants Commission. That was a real eye-opener for all concerned. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Yeah, sorry, Mr Mayor, something I did forget was the annual conference held on the 24th of October. Which the Councillor Judd and the General Manager myself attended. It's like a typical conference, I suppose, went through the various motions put forward by councillors across the state. And we also met up with our sister city council, Randwick, had a function with them, which is always good to see how they're going and so forth. But yeah, overall it was, as far as conferences go, it was a pretty recent one, I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Mayor and Councillor Judd and the General Manager, for flying the flag. The first conference I've missed in my 18 years, but I've heard from other councils that, yeah, you certainly represented us very, very well, so thank you. No further delegates' reports. If not, let's proceed to page 54, the Mayor's report for the month of October. And on page 57, there's a recommendation for the October Mayor's report to be noted. Thank you. Councillor McLaren, Councillor Oliver, moved, seconded. Is further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Let's now proceed to staff reports, because I have a motion to receive staff reports. Councillor Good, thank you. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. We now go to page 59, the General Manager's report, calendar of events 11.1, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, as you can see, the calendar of events is there for adoption or noting.
Thank you. Councillor, probably the only other one I could see there is on January the 26th, the area park have a breakfast at Davey Park as well. Thank you. Someone prepared to move with that addition that the calendar events be noted? Thank you, Councillor Good. Councillor Reinhold, thank you. Moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, the town planner.
Just noting, Mr Mayor, the runway opening as well on the 19th.
Good. Yes, good point. On December the 19th, the runway upgrade official opening as well. Thank you. Good pickup. So with those two additions, it's been moved and seconded that we note the report. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Over to page 60, 11.2, the seals, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the seals are there for endorsement. There is one additional seal to be affixed, and that's the bitumen emulsion tender with Fulton Hogan, which we received this morning.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. Councillor McLaren.
Can I belatedly note a pecuniary interest in the first deed? I didn't realise that. Thank you.
Yes. First deed, pecuniary interest. Councillor McLaren has declared that. Thank you. Councillors, there's a recommendation there to be considered that Council endorse the seal being affixed to the above documents with the addition of the bitumen tender. Councillor Good, Deputy Mayor, thank you. Moved, seconded. Further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare that motion carried. Thank you very much. Over to page 61, 11.3, Code of Meeting Practice. The General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this is the Code of Meeting Practice that was workshopped last month, and it was put on public exhibition for the 28 days. There were a few more than 13 submissions, which you have a copy of, all in relation to one particular section of the Code of Meeting Practice, and it's for Council's consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr General Manager. Councillors, you can obviously see that that out of the very cumbersome document, some 50 pages, there's one item that of course created a lot of interest, as you'd expect, and I think everyone's been respectful, whatever view that they've had in relation to the acknowledgement of country. So I'll go now to Councillor Judd.
Just a question, Mr Mayor, that
yes,
all these late submissions have come in, we haven't had a chance to read them, that's all. So.
Thanks, Councillor Judd. The General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I guess the correct answer to that, Councillor Judd, is that they were received outside the submission time period, but I've given them to you for reference more than anything else.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I now go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not in favour of this acknowledgement of country. I think it's divisive. It's already caused some division within our community already with the submissions that we've received. Council resolved in the last term of this council to acknowledge that this was Wiradjuri country on our Shire signs. It hasn't been done yet, but that would be a permanent reminder of the history of this particular part of Australia. I don't know what this is designed to achieve. I really don't, other than it does achieve division. We changed our national anthem a little while back to one and free from young and free. And now we've got our politicians who are standing in front of three flags whenever they address the media and the public. We'll never be one until we stop talking about this. We just need to have one flag and get behind it, and just everybody's equal. There's no doubting about that. We can't change what history has done. Anyway, I won't say anything more than that, but I'm not in support of it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor Oliver. And that's what Council's been very, very proud of this council during the workshop that we had as we addressed each of these issues, that particularly on this issue, everyone has had their personal view and everyone's been so very respectful of each other's views, whether they're in agreement or otherwise. So I thank you, Councillor Oliver. Any other comments in relation to the Code of Meeting Practice? I go to Councillor Judd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I might just give it a history of where I'm coming from. Back in July this year, my wife and I attended my brother-in-law's one-man concert up in Cairns, David Hudson. David Hudson, Aboriginal. He's one of well-known international artist and didge player. And part of his show was telling the story of his life. And he mentioned that his mother and his grandmother were removed from their settlement and taken to a church mission above Cairns. And it wasn't until his mother was 32 years old that she finally got an exemption certificate to be able to leave it. And David said that his mother kept that exemption certificate in her purse till the day she died, because she was always worried that that would be taken back again. Now, David was born in 61, and he said that for the first 6 years of his life, and people before him, they come under the Queensland Flora and Fauna Act. Think about that. So it wasn't until 1967 that Prime Minister John Gorton brought in the referendum to recognise the Australian Aboriginals in the Constitution and to be counted in the referendum, in the census. So it wasn't until 67 that they were recognised as human beings in Australia. Think about it. On a local scene, I went to school at Erie Park and Temora High, and I studied social studies, history and geography. And I'm afraid that I can't remember much about any history about our Indigenous past. And it's sort of, I get frustrated years later you find all about what was going on. In our local church, the ladies used to raise money for the Cootamundra Girls' Home. And as a young man, I didn't think much about it. You know, I thought, oh, well, they must be orphans or something. So later on you find the real story. And it was only back in June this year, I was down at State Parliament with Alex at the Rhodes Congress, and there's a big display inside State Parliament about their New South Wales Parliament's apology, and featured there is in the Cootamundra Girls' Home. And you sort of, oh, that's the history of it. So anyway, that's where I'm coming from, and I think we sort of, unfortunately, our society is not very proud of how we've treated Indigenous people in the past, and I think recognising, just acknowledge them in our meeting code of practice is the least we can do, and I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Judd. Thank you. Any other comments, councillors, about that or any other aspects of the, there's many other aspects of the meeting code. If not, there is, it was noted, I think, Mr General Manager, we had some, what was it, 17 responses?
Yes, around that.
Around that. And the only topic, of course, was, of course, the acknowledgement of country. And I, you know, from a personal perspective, I have to say that I concur with Councillor Oliver. I don't see that there's any difference. However, at the end of the day, we're in a democracy, and we will do whatever this council choose to do, and what we believe is right and true, whether that's in relation to that issue or any other issues that are within the document. So there's a recommendation there, councillors, well, that it be considered. So I'm assuming that the General Manager asking for it to be adopted.
Yes, Mr Mayor, the code has been through a workshop process. The submissions have to be considered, and after the consideration of those, if council wishes to take into account those or make changes as a result of those, they can. Other than that, you can adopt the code as it is.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just one other thing I probably should have said earlier on. I too, when I went to school, we had an Indigenous fellow there. I won't mention his name because he's passed away. He was part of the stolen generation. We didn't know that then, but we didn't see a black fella. We seen our mate. He was our mate, and it was just, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a racist person, but I just can't see what any of this stuff achieves. I think it's whatever we're talking about them and us, it's just not going to be harmonious. I don't believe, and particularly with the flag business too. So, but anyway, I'm not going to say anything more. So that's it. I'll vote on the matter. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Oliver. And again, I say that how proud I am of particularly the workshop and here in the chamber today, that everyone's talked from their heart, and nobody can tell anybody else how to feel and think. And again, thank you for your candour, all that have spoken. I go now to Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. It's a massive issue and such a tiny part of the code of meeting practice. It would be great if everyone who wrote a letter had to come and sit through a council meeting and participate. However, one aspect of this is, quite frankly, that I think the letters are overwhelmingly in support of it. The general people I've spoken to in the community, there's a lot of mixed feelings, and it's been fantastic listening to those views and discussing them with people and getting the good cross-section of information. And the best thing that I've encountered in this whole exercise is that people have been civil and supportive of each person having their opinion and their voice in this matter. And that's probably the best thing about being in Australia. You know, we discussed things like living in China where you don't get a choice on stuff like this. You know, and I think that's the beauty of Australia. It's been hard won by previous generations, this freedom that we enjoy. And yeah, like I say, I don't think it really needs to be terribly divisive. The only people this is going to affect is the people in this room, and it's going to take about 30 seconds each time we have a council meeting once a month. You know, if that impacts anyone adversely, well, I fail to see how, but, you know, that's my opinion on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Councillors, there is there's not a recommendation, so I'm happy to receive a motion. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that the draft code of meeting practice be put forward as written.
To be adopted? Yep. Yeah.
Doesn't have to be going public.
No. So you're moving, Mr Deputy Mayor, that the draft code of meeting practice is adopted as per the report?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Second to Councillor Irvine. Moved, seconded. Further discussion? Councillor Judd.
One point I didn't mention before was that even though I'm supporting the motion, it does bug me when they go to conferences like our Shires conference and every speaker gets up and does the acknowledgement, and I think that's really not necessary. I think it needs to be done once at the start of a conference or a meeting, and that should be left at that. But there.
Thanks, Councillor Judd. I think there'd be many that would agree with that. I think that it loses its lustre and it cheapens, and is my view as well. However, you have a motion there from the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Irvine that the draft code of meeting practice is adopted as per the report. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Noting Councillor Oliver's dissent. Now, Councillor, just in relation to that there is the acknowledgement that being that that's now adopted and part of the meeting code, that we will commence that from our December meetings. And as I've indicated before, if this motion was passed, that, and if I was the mayor, I would not be parroting something that that has been written by a bureaucrat that, in my view, doesn't have any meaning, and therefore, the one that will be presented next month will be. There's a heck of a lot of time and effort gone into it, and it is one that that I believe includes all of us, and that is our first Australians and every other citizen that is just as important as the next. So I do thank you. Councillors, let's go over to the next item, which is page 118, 11.4, the review of organisational structure. The General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As noted in the report, section 333 of the Local Government Act requires that council redetermine their organisational structure within 12 months of a local government election. It's a bit of a strange one, this one, because what it asks for is the senior staff positions within the organisation structure, and then the roles and reporting lines and the resources allocated. Under our structure, there is only one senior staff position, that's myself. And the others, whilst they act in senior roles, don't meet the remuneration requirements as required by the Act. So I've put this up for just for a bit of background as to who's responsible, what the line of reporting is for the staff members, directors and senior managers under me. And I put it there for council to determine.
Thank you very much, Mr General Manager. Well, technically speaking, Mr General Manager, you don't even have to present this to council, if I'm being frank.
That's probably true, but it's a pretty meaningless report if it just has one line.
Yeah, no,
so at least this way you get to see the issues from a staff perspective.
No, and council are very grateful for that. I just know that we seem to be one of the very few councils that actually do this. Some just, general managers just do it, that's it. So yeah, I just think it's a good reminder for us to realise that that we are being kept better informed than some. Councillors, there's a recommendation there for you to consider on page 119, or is there an alternate? I go to Councillor Judd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to compliment the last paragraph about need for a review of the human resources function. I think it's good to see that's going to happen, and hope, we sort of need a bit of improvement in some areas, so it's good to see.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Judd, and I think all of us in the chamber would endorse your remarks and commend the General Manager in that space. Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation.
Thank you. So Councillor Good's moving the recommendation that Council redetermine the current organisational structure, and that's the language, Mr General Manager, that we need in the motion?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Seconded the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Page 122, 11.5, Local Government Remuneration Tribunal. The General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is the Local Government Remuneration Tribunal, which sets the remuneration levels for councillors and also looks at the categorisation of councils within their system. Each time they go through a review, they ask council to comment. Council in the past hasn't, but I've put it to council to determine if they wish to make a submission.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. I go to Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I thought we did make a submission before, Mr General Manager, but I presume we are in rural, the bottom one, in the category.
So Mr General Manager, we're in rural. I thought that's where we were.
Our council?
I think we're regional rural, actually.
Right. Anyway, regardless of that, my argument, I brought this up before, is that, and a few years ago I did studies in local government and comparisons between states and that, and my argument is that even though we're ranked down the bottom of usually in the remuneration tribunal, our workload as a councillor, whether in the Temora Shire, as we know, has been fairly extensive in recent years, And I guarantee we're not doing any less work than councils larger than us. And I'm not after more money or anything, but just saying that it's the workload is virtually the same right through to many councils. And I think we should put a submission in saying that, I think it's just, unbelievable the workload we've done in recent years. So that's my argument, and I'd like to see probably a submission along that lines that even though we might be ranked as a rural or regional council, I guarantee we're not doing any less work than what they are in Wagga or other bigger towns, so. Yeah. Thank you, Mr.
No, thanks very much, Councillor Judd, and I can't disagree with anything that you've said. And I know that none of us are angling for more money, but it's not about us. It's about those that perhaps may be interested to follow us or join us. You've got to be aware that there's not everyone's in a financial position to be able to do what we're doing and the workload involved. That we love doing, I might add. The Deputy Mayor.
Well, yeah, I was going to make comments on similar to that, but at the same time, we don't take the maximum amount.
Well, that's true.
Either. So, I mean, basically all this is about is remuneration. So if there's issue, we can always adjust that ourselves. So we don't need to write submissions to do that. So.
Well, that's a good point, Mr. Deputy Mayor, because we choose, I think we're in band 6 out of, 10 bands, which, and that took a lot of convincing, I think, the previous council, because we were way down below, which wasn't appropriate. The General Manager.
Yes, just to clarify, Councillor Judd, your point there, we are in rural. There's 57 councils in that rural classification. I was confusing that with the large rural that we get rated against that we get compared against in our classifications, for the local government, the Office of Local Government.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, what's your wish? I'm happy to receive a motion. You can either note the report or you might like that we place a submission articulating what you've heard from Councillor Judd. So, Councillor Judd?
I'll move that we do make a submission on the very lines I spoke about, that the workload for whether you're a rural council or a larger council, there's not very little difference, if any. So.
And that's in relation to when they're setting their band limits and, okay, thank you. Has Councillor Judd's moved that way? Is there a second for the motion, please? Councillor McLaren? Thank you. Moved and seconded. The Director?
Can I confirm the wording of that resolution?
Yes, that Temora Shire Council submit make a submission to the Local Government Remuneration Tribunal. I think that's all that's required, isn't it? Based on what we've heard. And this doesn't have to be a 40-page, just 30 will be fine. Anyway, so Councillor Judd, you've moved that way. Is there a seconder for the motion? Thank you. Sorry, Councillor McLaren, you did, yes. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Over to page 125, 11.6, Policy Revision, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, these are the two of the policies that were reviewed at the workshop, and they require being put out for public comment. The suggestion there, or the recommendation there, says to go for 28 days, which, because we've got a late meeting this month, they won't get back until the January 23 meeting.
Thank you. Councillors, there's a recommendation on page 125 for you to consider. Councillor Oliver? So you'll move the recommendation?
Move that way.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Second, the Deputy Mayor. Moved, seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Page 159, 11.7, a risk management policy, the General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This risk management policy went to the last, or to the risk management meeting, the inaugural risk management meeting. This is a high-level policy looking at our commitment, basically making a commitment to our risk management framework, and the recommendation here is it be adopted. It doesn't need to go out to public exhibition.
Thank you. Councillors, you have the report there and a recommendation for you to consider. Or is there an alternate? Councillor McLaren.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren has moved that. Seconded. Councillor Reinhold. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion, please? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Nothing else of an urgent, late nature, Mr. General Manager?
No, I have nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, over to page 164. Engineering Services. We have nil to report. However, the engineers have advised us that they're very efficient and they have their reports in the committee papers. So you take that on board if you so choose. No, thank you very much, our works and assets engineers. And particularly, actually, we will say, because I know councillors have mentioned it, we'll particularly give our warm thanks and praise to our engineering team and our outdoor staff. Again, we mentioned flooding events and the damage that it's caused to roads, but briefing council has been most impressive, and I know council are very, very grateful for that and for our team stepping up during some challenging times for our Shire Council and our community. So again, our warm thanks goes to our engineering team led by our two managers. Let's go over to page 165, the Environmental Services Department report, 13.1, Developer Contributions Plan. The Director.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just reporting that our draft plan's been placed on public exhibition for the statutory 28 days. No submissions were received, and recommending that we now adopt that plan.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Councillor Good, are you all moving the recommendation that Council adopt the Council's Developer Contributions Plan 2022? Thank you. Second for the motion, Councillor McLaren. Thank you. Moved, seconded. Is there further discussion? I go to Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for the Director. How often is Schedule 1 updated? Is it in 3 years' time, or...? I'd just be interested to know how we...
I think as we tick those jobs off, we need to add more. So it's as the plan's delivered, we need to add more to the list. So there's not any statutory time frame, but I think the last review was probably a couple of years ago. So,
is there a way that councillors could get an annual report on the jobs completed and those recommended to go onto the list for councillors to endorse annually?
Yes, of course.
Could I add that to the resolution that councillors be furnished with an annual report on the works that have been completed in Schedule 1 and those proposed to be put on Schedule 1 for council's endorsement, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Is Councillor Good happy with that inclusion? Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Councillor Irvine.
Yep. What are the major changes between this Schedule 1 list and the previous one? I think the Main Street upgrade might have moved up in priority. Is that correct?
The Director.
I think there was a change in priorities. I actually printed out the previous one, and I must have left it with some other paper.
The Director of Environmental Services.
Yeah, I don't think this is about priorities. It's just about a list that we tick off. So it's not a prioritised list.
No, that's a good point, Mr. Director, that for all of us is that it's not a priority list, but it's a list as things are deemed appropriate for this schedule, then they're included there, and then it's obviously up to council as to what they feel is a priority. Councillor Irvine.
Well, just to make further comment in relation to that, it's sort of prioritised in some respects in terms of its delivery timeframe. So there is a priority of some, in some degrees.
Well, that's only suggested delivery, is my understanding. The Director?
Yeah, that's the year that we hope to tick it off based on the level of economic development and how much funds we collect.
Yeah, thank you. Councillors, if there's no further discussion, the General Manager.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, can we just get the wording right on that, please? Can you have a look at that, Councillor McLaren?
It's more an annual review or an annual report to councillors to inform councillors of what items have been achieved on that Schedule 1 and the proposed new additions to the schedule.
And through you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The Director of Environmental
And
Services.
it would also update on the amount of funds collected as well.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. The seconder happy with that clarification. Thank you. The mover, rather. Okay, moved and seconded. We have that. An annual report. Our Executive Assistant is on leave for a week, so we're grateful to have our Engineering Environmental Services Secretary, Miss Burnett, that's stepping up again. So, we happy to inform of projects and any future projects completed? Yeah.
Recommended future projects for inclusion on the schedule. That's really all. Oh,
For consideration, yeah.
consideration.
Yeah, to be included. Anyway, it is getting a bit wordy, but yes, Schedule 1. Yeah. Thank you. So let's read this for Councillor Good and Councillor McLaren have moved and seconded that Council adopt the Temora Shire Council Developer Contributions Plan of 2022 and further that an annual report be supplied to Council to inform of projects completed and recommended future projects to be included in Schedule 1 and funds collected. And a statement of funds collected. Yeah, that just tidies that up, doesn't it? Okay, mover and seconder are happy? Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks very much. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very, very much. Let's go over, Councillor, to page 177, 13.2, Places to Play grant application. The Director of Environmental Services.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Our town planner's been working with some state government appointed consultants who receive funding under the Places to Play funding program. We've come up with a fairly extensive design. It's probably well in excess of the budget. Well, it is in excess of the $400,000 that we've been invited to apply for, but it'll work as a master plan that we can chip off. And yeah, the next step is to support the draft plans and support our application to make application under that program and commit 50k to the co-contribution funding component for this project.
Thank you. Mr Director, just for clarity on recommendation number 3, commit the 50,000 in co-contribution funding to this project. That would be drawn from the 7/12 schedule. Yeah.
Yes, Bradley Park is in that.
Yeah. I just thought it should feature in the recommendation as opposed to leaving it open to heavens knows where you might want to pluck it from. Anyway, thank you. Councillors, the report is there and I commend the town planner, as the Director has alluded to, for efforts to date. And we will do our bit, Mr Director and Madam Town Planner, with the lobbying and advocacy in the political arena. Let's go to Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, Claire Golder came to the Heritage Committee this morning and detailed some of the amazing consultation that she's been doing, and it's a fantastically exciting project. These kind of parks are all the rage at the moment. I went to Bungendore, they have a really extensive one there. Cootamundra's got that one on the corner near the railway stations. This natural play is really where all the parks are going, and it's really exciting to have that variety.
Thanks, Councillor McLaren. Councillors, you have a recommendation there for you to consider. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Mr Mayor, I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you.
Inclusion of the 7.12.
Oh, thank you. So the Deputy Mayor has moved that way. Second for the motion, please. Councillor Oliver, thank you. Moved. Seconded. Is there further discussion? Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, just a question. Are we applying for the grant funding for the full amount and building it stage 1 and 2 if we can?
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. The Director.
We're applying for 350,000. How far that will get us, we're not sure. We have got some quantity figures, surveyor's figures provided by the architects. We think we can do a lot more with the money than those Sydney prices. So, it's a master plan that they're working towards. Whether we get all of stage 1 and 2 remains to be seen, but we'll do our usual and stretch the dollars that we receive as far as we can.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Anything of an urgent, late nature, Mr Director?
Nothing, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Let's now go over to page 205, the Department of Administration and Finance, 14.1, External Grant Funding Policy. The Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the grant funding policy has been workshopped by Council last week, and we're looking at putting it out on display. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillors, there's a recommendation there for you to consider. Councillor McLaren.
Just a question on page 211 about the business case. That's for community grant funding applications and council. Like a business case is pretty mandatory for a grant application over 50,000.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. The Director of Environmental Services, or are you deferring?
Can I defer to the grants officer?
Yes, thank you. The Town Planner / Grants Officer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the intention is for where council or the community is making a larger grant application, that council be provided with sufficient information so that they understand what they're actually applying for, which would form the business case.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor McLaren, you're happy? Thank you. Anything further? Councillors, the Director of Administration and Finance.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just note on page 210 of the business paper, under the short time frame grant programs, there's an additional zero there in the first 50,000. So we will fix that up before it goes out.
Yes,
yep.
well spotted. Thank you. As the Town Planner, did you wish to speak?
No, I have no further comments.
Thank you. Sorry, your thing was on, that was all. You were flashing red. Right, thank you. Go to Councillor Good.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Good has moved the recommendation. Second for the motion. Second, thank you, Councillor Reinhold. Moved and seconded that we adopt the recommendation. Discussion on the motion. Councillor McLaren.
The short time frame paragraph doesn't really sit well with me, in that any grant application over 50,000, if it's of short notice, can be decided by the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor and the General Manager and the Head of Department, with councillors to endorse at the next meeting. My concern is there's no upper limit to that, so they can apply for a $2 million grant or $5 million grant and commit council to whole of life cost of an asset that the majority of councils hasn't approved. So I would prefer that short time grants go out to councillors via mobile phone and email for response within 24 hours, and that if no response is received, that is an acquiescence with the proposal, but it allows councillors to express their opinion as a body, a governing body, and a majority response to that proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're moving an amendment, Councillor McLaren, or?
Yes, I would like to amend that short-time paragraph to say that where it is a short-term funding opportunity over 50,000, that councillors be contacted via mobile phone and email for their response over 24 hours, if they, for their opinion, with a majority response required, and any lack of response will be taken to be an acquiescence with the grant application.
Right, have we captured all that? Because that's very wordy.
Yes, but I hope you understand my
Oh, yeah, I understand
meaning.
the meaning, of course, but it's a very clunky amendment. But let's see if we can fine-tune it a bit. So I'll just get this up.
Might I suggest that the second...
We go to Councillor Good.
Might I suggest the second paragraph is the one that needs to be amended, deleting out "if deemed necessary by the General Manager," and then it will just say a request for comment from all councillors regarding the proposed application to be made via email, and then follow on.
Well, if that's what the mover... Thanks, Councillor Good. So, Councillor McLaren, are you happy to do that? Because it seems like the mover is prepared. So, Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So in the first paragraph where it says, should this occur, the General Manager with the concurrence of the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and the relevant head of department, is that going to be removed and replaced with the General Manager will request a comment from all councillors regarding the proposed application, seeking a majority response?
So if thanks, Councillor McLaren. So I'm just wondering, Mr. General Manager, the scenario that if we don't, just say for whatever reasons, we don't have, say that there's only 3 able to respond within 24 hours, and not that we get very tired, and that's not our fault, of these short time frame grant applications. But what happens in that instance if you haven't got a majority of 5 that have responded?
Mr Mayor, I think Councillor McLaren covered that in her discussions. If there's no response, we'll assume acquiescence, as in they agree with it.
Okay, yep. Okay, so how are we going here? Amendment to the short time frame grant paragraph where it is a funding opportunity over 50,000 that councillors be consulted via mobile phone and email with a majority response required. If there is no response, it will be assumed to be acquiescent. Now, does that capture?
If there is no response from a councillor, it will be assumed they acquiesce.
If there is no response from a councillor. You're the word, Smith.
Smith.
Okay. Now, so hang on, we haven't got a. So, Councillor McLaren, you're moving that amendment.
The last sentence we need to put in, if there is no response from a councillor within 24 hours, it will be assumed that they acquiesce.
Yeah. Okay, so happy with how it reads, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Judd, thank you. Moved and seconded for discussion on the amendment. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Is that replacing that second paragraph, is it? Is that the intention? In that on page, under short time frame.
That's my understanding, yeah. This is amendment to the motion of Councillor Good and Councillor Reinhold. Okay, discussion, Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, I think that's a good move. As it says, anything over 50,000 has got to have a business case. There's got to be some paperwork being generated. 24 hours shouldn't hold up anything. I think we demonstrated that we can respond just this week with a matter where 8 out of 9 councillors responded within 24 hours in relation to a request. So I like it.
Thanks, Councillor Irvine. Well, if there's no further discussion, I'm going to put the motion first, and that is the recommendation on page 205 that Council place a draft external grant funding policy on public exhibition for 28 days and receive a future report on the outcome of the public exhibition, moved by Councillor Good and Councillor Reinhold. So put... sorry, I beg your pardon. Beg your pardon. Exactly, the amendment first. I do beg your pardon. So the amendment has been moved by Councillor McLaren and Councillor Judd that as I've just read, and further that an amendment to the short time frame grant program paragraph as follows, where it is a funding opportunity over $50,000 that councillors be consulted via mobile phone and email with majority response required. If there is no response from a councillor within 24 hours, it will be assumed that they acquiesce. Okay, so I'm going to put the amendment first. All those of that opinion, please raise your hands. Those to the contrary, declare the amendment carried. I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Let's go over to page 213, 14.2, the audited financial statements. We've heard from the auditors, Crow. And does the Director of Administration and Finance have anything to add? Thank you.
I've got more reports. Not to the grants one, no.
The 14.2 audited financial statement.
No, the report's as written, sorry. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Go to Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. To the Director, I do have one question on page 221. It says that the result was driven by a $2.3 million increase in user fees and charges. What would those user fees and charges encompass?
Thank you. I'll go to the Director of Administration Finance.
Yep, thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. So the two main ones are our RMCC State Roads contract and also Pinnacle Community Services through the NDIS and home care packages. Yep.
Yes, we didn't think we'd put up our fees and charges of sporting grounds and facilities, tempting as it may be. Let's go to Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, just a question to the Director of Administration and Finance. How onerous is it to produce those metrics with the additional grant funding removed to reflect the actuals?
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Just give the Director a moment. So the Director of...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the FAGs in advance amount was actually touch over $3 million, which represented 75% of the 23 allocation. So the additional payment this financial year was a touch over $1 million. Previously, we've only received 50% in advance. So if you back that out, it brings us back to around about a break-even position. So a lot of those ratios are distorted by the receipt of that extra 25% of our allocation, particularly our operating result ratio.
Thank you. Councillors, anything further in relation to the audited financial statements? noting what the auditor indicated about the RFS, but obviously this council has a very firm position in that regard, which is immovable. Well, if there's no further discussion, there's a recommendation there, councillors, for you to consider that we receive and note the financial statements and audit reports for the year ended 30 June 2022. Deputy Mayor, thank you, has moved that way. Thank you, Councillor Sinclair. Councillor Oliver has seconded the motion. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Over to page 233, 14.3, September Council meeting minutes. The Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report's as written. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillors, you have the report there for you to consider, and there is a recommendation there on page 234. Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, I move that recommendation be adopted.
Thanks, Councillor Irvine. Let's move. Pardon me. Oh dear, can I? Oh. Councillor Irvine has moved that way. Is there a second for the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Good. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. And declare that motion carried. Thank you. Over to page 235, 14.4, records for distraction. The Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report's as written. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillors, the report is there and there is a recommendation for you to consider which suggests that the attached list of records be destroyed under GA 39 Retention and Disposal Authority. Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that way.
Thank you. Councillor Good has moved that way. Second for the motion, please. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, moved. Seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. And declare the motion carried. Thank you. Page 237, 14.5, rates, processing and pensioner concession policies. The Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Two policies that we workshopped last week, and there's a resolution recommendation there. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillors, we did workshop last week and there is a recommendation there for Council to consider. What happened? Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move that way.
Thank you. Move the recommendation that Council adopt the rates processing management policy and the rates charges pensioner concession policy. Thank you. Second for the motion, please. Councillor Irvine. Thank you. Moved. Seconded. Further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. And declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Page 250, 14.6, a quarterly budget review. The Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report's as written. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillors, there's the budget review there for you to consider to the 30th of September. Comments or questions? The Deputy Mayor. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, is moving the recommendation. That is, Council adopt the quarterly budget review for the quarter ending 30 September 2022. Is there a second for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Moved, seconded. Is there discussion? There's no further discussion. Put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. I declare that motion carried. And thank you very, very much. Nothing of an urgent, late nature of the Director, please.
No, thank you.
Thank you. And sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Judd.
Mr Mayor, did we deal with 14.3 or not?
14.3, which was the September Council meeting, yes. Yeah, thank you. So, Madam Director, again, Council thanks you for your efforts. We note that you'll be holidaying again in the coming days. No, very well earned, and again, our warm thanks to you and the team. Let's now go to page 262, correspondence, the General Manager, 15.1.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is from Re-Rock and the Riverina JO about the way forward, one organisation. You will recall that Council resolved to basically, what was the thing? It's stand alone and the JO folds. That wasn't the preferred option of the committee. they've actually resolved that Rurock standalone and that JO goes into hiatus, which was our second option. So they've asked that we endorse the actions of the or the decision to adopt option 4 and the actions that flow from that decision.
Thanks, Mr. General Manager. Councillors, as you know, the Deputy Mayor and I and the General Manager went to that meeting. We represented Council's position. I think there was only us and Goldenfields that had that order, but the same principle applied. And it's an unknown quantity what Wagga, they made a last-ditch attempt to convince us of what a great offer it was for them to pay our membership for 2 years. And then after that, we're not sure. But anyway, I do hope that they consider coming back to Rurock if in the event that our councils formally endorse the position, which I understand that they will. So, councillors, we're in your hands. The Deputy Mayor, did you have anything you wish to add?
No, Mr. Mayor, I think you've covered it pretty well. Yeah.
Thank you. So, councillors, well, there's not a formal recommendation, but effectively the Deputy Mayor and I are asking that someone consider that Temora Shire Council formally endorses option 4. Thank you. Councillor Judd, Councillor Good. Thank you. Have moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, over to page 267, 15.2, Murrumbidgee Local Health District. I'll declare an interest as the chairman of the Temora LHAC, which is an advisory body to the Murrumbidgee District. So I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to take the gavel. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I'll hand it over to the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's, councillors, you'll see this is an application from Murrumbidgee Local Health District. It's a bit of an unusual one in that we provided sponsorship for the 2022 awards, but they actually occurred after the end of June 22. So if council were to go down this track, we'll have actually sponsored 2 lots of awards in the one financial year, if that makes sense. And our donations budget, as you can see there, we've spent 7,234 of a total budget of 15,000.
So, in essence, council will be, as I said, funding two in a one financial year. Well, everyone believes, I'm sure everyone believes that this is certainly well worth supporting. It's yeah, where do you know, how far do you go, I guess? Councillor McLaren.
So was the issue at the end of June, was that money for the previous year and we didn't pay anything the previous financial year?
No, it was it's simply a timing issue. The 2022 event was held after the end of the financial year, whereas this one's before the end of the next financial year.
Councillor Irvine.
Just, so it seems as though just out of this particular donations budget, we're going to be asked to contribute twice. However, that means technically we're back in sync as of the start of next year with our donations budget. So at this point, I'll move that we accede to the request.
Okay, Councillor Irvine's moving that we donate $500 towards the Murrumbidgee Local Health District Excellence Awards. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Reinhold has seconded the motion. Further comment? No further comment. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Motion carried. And back to me. Mr Mayor, Council will move to donate $500 towards the Murrumbidgee Health Excellence Awards.
Very good, thank you. I might have been a bit tougher if I was in the room, but anyway, thank you very, very much, Mr Deputy Mayor and councillors. Councillors, let's go over to page 273, 15.3, Temora Greyhound Racing Club, the General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. This is an application from the Temora Greyhound Racing Club for sponsorship. The amount that we've resolved is, in the past, is $500 towards their events.
Thank you. Councillors, I think we all know how hard-working the Greyhound Racing Club are, particularly racing nearly every single week, but I'm just so impressed that how they're all working so very, very hard, and the community does benefit out of it. And what I'm also grateful for is that the President, Mr Schwanke, attends our Sports Council delegates meetings and always provides updates and reports, so they're not just worried about their own dunghill, so to speak, they're also very much wish to help others in our community as well. So I just have a bit of a soft spot for them. But that's up to council, what you'd like to do. Go to Councillor Judd.
Happy to move that, donate $500 again, please.
Thank you. So Councillor Judd is moving that we donate $500 towards a race at the Temora Greyhound Racing Club. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Irvine. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? There's no further discussion. I'll put the motion to. All those of that opinion, please say aye. On the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Let's go over to page 276, 15.4, event application. The General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this is the annual Temora Anzac Day March. It does require a road closure, whatever. It's actually a little bit misleading because we do have a vote within our budget for the Anzac Day March, so it's not coming out of our additional to our budget or out of the donations budget.
So it's essentially just approval to have the event in Gloucester, Callaghan Park. Effectively approval. Councillor Oliver.
Yes. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move that we give permission, or what do we need to do?
Proceed to the request.
Yes,
yeah, thank you. Deputy Mayor, second that. Thank you. Moved, seconded, discussion. There's no further discussion. I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Over to page 278, 15.5, event application, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On a very similar note, there's also a separate budget for the Australia Day ceremonies. So this again is for the use of Gloucester Park. The costs are met from that budget.
Thank you.
Not the donations budget.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Good, move that we accede to the request. Thank you. Seconded for the motion. Councillor Bushell. Moved, seconded. Further discussion? There's no further discussion. I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Over to page 279, 15.6, another event application.
Yes, Mr Mayor, this is for the area park Carols by Candlelight in Davey Park. There's no cost to council in relation to this. They just require council approval to hold the event.
Thank you. It's just great to see event applications after those wretched COVID years. So it's so lovely to see. Councillors, you have a request there for you to consider from the Area Park Advisory Committee. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll grant approval.
Thank you. So you'll move that we accede to the request. Councillor Reinhold has seconded. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. 15.7 over on page 280, the General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a request for Breast Screen New South Wales to bring their mobile screening van to the block at the back of the Masonic Lodge. This is the normal place they set up. However, Yeah, however, I won't say there's no cost in relation to this because there has been in the past. They obviously chew a lot of electricity and we do compensate the electricity for the Masonic Lodge.
Thank you. And we'll just fix up the 2022.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just a minor little typo. Go to Councillor McLaren.
Using Councillor Oliver's words, I'd like to approve that too, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren is moving that council accede to the request. Is there a seconder? Councillor Good, thank you. Councillor Good, second the motion. Discussion, Councillor Irvine.
We discussed the fees payable in this agreement with the Masonic Lodge not that long ago. I think it's all been approved.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to council. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. And I declare that motion carried. Thank you. Over to page 281, 15.8, a Christmas party.
Yes, Mr Mayor, they're seeking the use of Gloucester Park for the Bright Beginnings Christmas party. Probably the only thing that's a bit unusual, it's a fair size event, 180 people in attendance roughly. They have various activities there, including a farm animal petting zoo, but they seek the approval to use Gloucester Park during that time.
Thank you. Mr General Manager, do they need public liability, or is that just a public park that anybody can use? Question without notice. The General Manager.
Look, it is a public park that anyone can use. What we would probably do, or what we'd normally do in these instances, is we'd run it past our risk people. They'd go and have a look just to make sure that the public's safe up there. But it's pretty low impact. A couple of lambs and a goat or something, and some face painting. Yeah.
Don't knock goats. Do not knock goats. That's them's fighting words. Well, councillors, what's your wish? Councillor Good.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Good's moving the recommendation that council grant approval. Seconder, Councillor Bushell. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Let's go over to page 283, 15.9, the Sacred Heart Parish, the General Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a bit of a different one in that there's an application for the 24th of December, which is a Saturday, obviously Christmas Eve, which will require the stage to be taken up on a weekend and brought back either Saturday evening, Christmas Eve evening, or Christmas Day. So it could be a little bit of an expensive exercise for council to do that, but it's up to council on that.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. I think the request over on page 284 is very brief, of course, that just asking if they're able to use the mobile stage for Mass. But we're in your hands. I go to Councillor Irvine.
When would be the next available day that it could be picked up, just at the normal rates?
Is the question directed to the General Manager? So the General Manager.
Yeah, we've got Christmas Day. It'll be the Wednesday.
Yeah, it'd be the Wednesday.
Tuesday.
So Monday would be Boxing Day, and then Tuesday is an extra holiday for Christmas. So that Wednesday would be the first non-public holiday.
I'll go now to the Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Mayor. Look, I think in this case, council has to trust. They haven't actually asked, for the cost to be donated. So I think council needs to probably charge the higher fee of $400 higher fee, and at least that covers a fair percentage of the wages to to have staff, put it up and pick it up the following day. We can't. I don't think we can leave it there over a period of time because it's just asking for vandalism. I think so. It needs to be, I think, picked up as quick as possible after the event finishes.
Thanks, Mr Deputy Mayor. Perhaps if we did go that way, and then it's a matter for the Sacred Heart Parish, if they wanted to write to council to ask them to consider to donate some, all, or what have you. So, is the Deputy Mayor moving the motion?
Oh, yes, I'll move we grant the request, but we charge a higher fee.
Thank you.
The
appropriate, as per fees and charges schedule. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, has moved that way. Seconded, Councillor McLaren. Thank you. Councillor McLaren. Discussion.
Can we add and further that they be advised that they can approach council for a concession for this fee, or do you think they'll realise they can apply for it?
I'm sure that the word will, there's a few members of Sacred Heart in this chamber and elsewhere. Thank you. Moved and seconded. To further discussion, Councillor Bushell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just hoping whether we could just defer the decision to December rather than all this paperwork and just seek if they want it to be donated and make the decision in December council meeting. Is that something we could do?
Thanks, Councillor Bushell. Mr General Manager, I would have thought we need to give them permission. Yeah, the General Manager.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, thank you. It'll only be really the week before the event. So I think they need some surety as to what's going to happen. We can certainly have discussions with them in relation to it anyway.
Thank you. And I appreciate that Councillor Bush was only trying to look for opportunity to save time for staff, so yeah, and paperwork. So thank you. If there's no further discussion, we have a motion from the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair and Councillor McLaren that we accede to the request and further that that the appropriate fee be charged for the hire of the mobile stage. There's no further, further discussion. Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is something that I take it it's a multi-denominational Christmas service. It's something that's very popular. I see part of council's, not their business, but part of what they do in the community is contribute to the community and to the well-being of the community and and so I think that we should grant the request, and I'd like to move an amendment that we do not charge them for the hire of the van.
Thank you, Councillor Good. Just to clarify, though, what your initial remarks, I understand that this is specifically the Sacred Heart Parish. If it was the Joint Christian Leaders one, then yes, I could sort of understand. But they have a separate one on Saturday the 10th of December, which is in Gloucester Park, and that is where all of the churches combined for Christmas carols, which is a very special event. However, this is for the Sacred Heart Parish specifically. So based on that information, are you still wishing to move your amendment? Councillor Good.
No, Mr Mayor. If there is a joint service that they're all involved with, and I presume we donate the van for that service.
Thank you. Question about no. Well, traditionally we have, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I withdraw the motion.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Good. There's no further discussion on the motion. Further discussion, Councillor McLaren.
I actually think Christmas Eve service goes across the faiths, denominations of the churches, and a lot of people like to go to church Christmas Eve. So I would like to move the amendment that we waive the fee through the donations budget.
You're the seconder of the original motion, Councillor McLaren.
Is there a problem with that? Is that in the Code of Conduct?
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Look, my counsel to council is that at the end of the day, I think all that we're requiring is that they will have a mobile stage. I have a very strong feeling that they're going to be writing a letter to council to ask us to consider donating some or all of the funds, and council could consider that at that time. So I'm going to put the motion to if the Deputy Mayor... Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Reinhold.
Just a suggestion, Mr Mayor, is that at the railway precinct we have that nice little, what do you call it, sound shell that wouldn't incur any fees.
Thank you, Councillor Reinhold. Well, that certainly could be mentioned if Council were happy, just as an option. I know that certainly the combined churches, one, they thought that they had to have it there when it was built, but they prefer, it seems, Gloucester, and I just think it's just tradition that Sacred Heart have always had their Christmas Eve in Callaghan, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to suggest that as an alternate in terms of saving all and sundry money. Thank you. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, there are some late items of correspondence that were deemed urgent, and keeping in mind that there were several items that we did receive, and then there was some that we felt that wasn't urgent, that will be put back to December. So you're just receiving the ones that Council believe are genuinely urgent. So we go to 15.10, the private function, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is an application to use the railway station platform for a hens party. It's actually a daytime function. It's not an evening. They will be serving alcohol there though, and there'll be up to 25 people attending. There is a charge in our fees and charges, I think, of $150 plus a bond in relation to that for Council's decision.
Thank you. Mr General Manager, the fees, do we know the approximate fees, please?
Yep, it's $150 for the hire of the platform and $200 deposit.
Okay, thank you. And the cleaning deposit, it's refunded if they leave it in that? Yep, great, thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. The applicant actually rang me up a little while back to ask about this, and I said that from our part we didn't have any issues with it. It's on a day that we won't be there anyway, on the third, whatever Saturday it is, the second Saturday of that month. I did tell her that she had to go through council to get council's approval. So from our point of view, and I'm not sure whether she approached the Platform Y group, but certainly we don't have any objections to it. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Oliver. Now go to Councillor Irvine.
Just a question to the General Manager. It's just a question of whether Council's exposed to any risk in relation to it, please.
Yeah, thank you. Exposed to any risk. The General Manager.
No more so than I guess any of our facilities. The platform has been, as you know, fenced to stop people from. That's obviously the most obvious risk, but I wouldn't say any more risk than any other. It's certainly been used for the St Anne's long lunch and has been used for a number of functions without any incidents. So I would hope that would continue.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren.
Will the paints be oil-based paints or water-based, that they will be able to be cleaned off the platform if there's any, drips and drops?
Thank you. Good question. I didn't think of that one. The General Manager, question without notice. Have you been to Tipsy Sips?
Mr Mayor, I have absolutely no idea. I haven't seen the application, and the Engineering Secretary she received it, and I don't think it's detailed in the.
So we perhaps can take that on notice because that's probably a good point. Thank you. Go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Might I say, if there are any spillages or messes, it's up to them to clean it up. We too will be on our hands and knees cleaning paint off the platform. So as long as they leave the place neat and tidy, not a problem. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Exactly. Thanks, Councillor Oliver. Okay, councillors, we're in your hands, and yes, it is certainly a unique event, but it's one for council to consider. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
I'd like to move that we grant approval. I mean, they got made aware that they've got to leave it in a neat and tidy state, and after all, that was what it was put there for function, simple that sort of thing. So, yeah.
So you're moving and the associated fees be charged. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Reinhold, you've seconded the motion. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Councillor Bushell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Is there exclusion of glass for the facility, or is it glass acceptable?
Thank you, Councillor Bushell. Question without notice to the Director of Environmental Services.
Yeah, we have permitted glass up there. It's not the same risk as a sporting oval, so it is permissible, providing any breakages are obviously cleaned up.
Thank you. You happy, Councillor Bushell? Thank you. Well, councillors, you have a motion from the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair and Councillor Reinhold that we accede to the request with the appropriate fees to be charged. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Over the page, 15.11, event application, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is an application for the Embrace Festival. This is one of the events that's run under a grant program, so it's included in our budget. So ignore the donations there because, again, it won't come out of the donations budget. So they're just requesting use of the railway precinct for that event.
Thank you. I go to Councillor Reinhold.
Oh, sorry, Mr Mayor, I probably should declare non-pecuniary as I'm on the board of the community centre.
Oh, yes, thank you. So Councillor Reinhold's declared that interest as a board member on the Temora Community Centre and is leaving the chamber. Thank you. Now go to Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that we accede to their request.
Thank you. Councillor Good and seconded Councillor Irvine. Moved, seconded. Further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll get back Councillor Reinhold, if she's available. The Deputy Mayor's gone to collect her. Oh no, she's indisposed. In the powder room. Now, councillors, well, let's proceed to 15.12, event application, the General Manager. Oh, and Councillor Judd's declared his interest earlier. Thank you, Councillor Judd. The General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Council, this is another one that's actually identified in our budget. There is a budget for it, so it doesn't come out of the donations budget.
Thank you. The councillors, there's a report there for you to consider, the Area Park Christmas tree, and pleasing to know that, yeah, there's a special line item in the budget specifically for it. Councillor Oliver.
I'll move that we grant approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Oliver has moved that we accede to the request. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Good. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. And just see if Councillor Reinhold's okay. Thank you. Welcome back to the chamber. During your lengthy absence, during your temporary absence, Councillor Reinhold, in relation to 15.11, the event application Embrace Festival, it was approved on the motion of Councillor Good and Councillor Irvine, carried unanimously. And also 15.12, event application Area Park Christmas tree, on the motion of Councillor Oliver and Councillor Good, it was also passed unanimously. Thank you. No further items of late urgent correspondence, Mr General Manager?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very, very much. Councillors, let's now move over to page 285. We have several notices of motion to consider. On page 285, 16.1, notice of motion relating to NBN fibre from Councillor Good. Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As I've stated in my notice.
Well, sorry, Councillor Good, you're formally moving.
Oh, sorry, I'm moving them.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I'm formally moving the motion.
Yes, thank you. Seconder for, thank you, Councillor Irvine. Moved, seconded, go to Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As I've stated in my notice of motion, I've got several offices around the area, and the cost to connect into a NBN fibre varies greatly, so much so that Temora is 6 times the cost of connecting in Cootamundra. We have received, and I don't know whether the rest of the councillors have got a copy of that letter from NBN about. Gary did contact NBN, and they said that there should be no reason why it is that way, and it may be for various reasons. But the bottom line is it still costs 6 times more to connect into fibre into Temora than it does in Cootamundra. So I think we should lobby to have that so we get better connectivity. Businesses these days need significant internet connection, and the fact that we can't, the cost of getting fibre is prohibitive, and I think for current businesses and to get any further businesses to come to Temora, that's going to become more and more an essential item.
Thanks very much, Councillor Good. Councillor Good, before I go to the General Manager in further discussion on the motion, I just want, in the actual motion you have before us, the Temora Shire Council lobby, the federal member and the Minister for Communications. The normal protocol is that you would go to the federal member with our request for him to lobby the Minister for Communications. So that's what I just wanted to draw that to your attention. Yeah, thank you. I go to the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As Councillor Good mentioned, at the Local Government New South Wales Conference, the delegates spoke to Andrew Cottrell, who's the NBN regional head. He undertook to get back to us as for a reasoning behind it. We were contacted earlier this week by Sean O'Reilly from the NBN Co, and he's given some background, which is, you know, it's difficult to know what the actual situation is. But one thing that Sean has offered is to come and talk to council if council wish to explain the pricing methodology. You know, virtually the system. They're saying that, you know, if NBN don't have different pricing for different areas, that's a wholesaler decision. And the thing to be careful of is that whilst one provider will say they've got a business grade NBN line, it's not necessarily so. It's a beefed up residential line, whereas others. So he said there's no reason why that should occur. So it would be handy, I think, to have him come and talk to council so we get a really good understanding of NBN situation.
Thank you. Perhaps the mover and seconder may consider adding that to the motion and further an invitation be extended to Mr Cottrell, was it?
Sean O'Reilly.
Oh, Mr O'Reilly, sorry, yeah, thank you. Councillor Good.
Yes, I'll agree to that.
Happy? Councillor Irvine, happy? Very good. Thank you, so we'll add that to the motion. Is there any further discussion? If there's no further discussion on the motion, and that is that we lobby the Federal Minister for Communications via the federal member to obtain better connection to the NBN Internet Direct Fibre, and further that an invitation be extended to Mr Sean O'Reilly from NBN to address council. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, we go over to page 288, 16.2, notice of motion, developer contributions. Councillor Good, you wish to move your motion, that is that council investigate the possibility of introducing a developer contribution pursuant to section 7.11 of the Environmental Planning Assessment Act 1979.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I move that way.
Move that way, thank you. Is there a second? Councillor McLaren moved, seconded, discussion, Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, this is something that we've spoken about before. Particularly if we're rezoning certain lots of land in Temora, which we're looking at doing in the future, and at the moment, rezoning land means a significant increase in the value of that land. It should be the person who gets the benefit of that increase in value of land should be contributing to the town amenity, and more particularly I'm thinking about parkland and having certain areas of the development to be available for parkland, so that it's not a burden on council to have to try and pay for that parkland out of other areas of council.
Thanks very much, Councillor Good. Further discussion on the motion that's before us. Go to Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, I think it's very appropriate that significant subdivisions foot the bill for a major infrastructure that is required to facilitate the project. I accept that there is a economic benefit to the community for the builders and the providers, suppliers and people like that. So there is some trade-off there in terms of the infrastructure. However, developers are in the game to make money, and if they're not picking up the proportion of the cost, then it's left to the residents and ratepayers to pick up that cost whilst they bank a profit. So I think this is certainly a very good fund whereby it's very much development specific, and it deals with major rezonings and elements like that, whereas the current 712 deals with everything else that's already in place. So I do wholeheartedly support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Irvine. I go to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm also understanding it that still can be done under 7.12, and it's a bit more wide-ranging than what this is. So it'd be interesting to get the director's comments.
Thanks, Mr Deputy Mayor. The Director of Environmental Services.
I think 4 or 5 years ago, when we considered ways of collecting developer contributions, we considered the options of 711 versus 712. I think we probably did a report on that probably 5 or 6 years ago, and you know, the 711s are regarded as fairly complex. They're fairly expensive. We'd need outside consultants to set these sort of things up. They're resource hungry to report on. And, you know, they basically at that time we concluded that the 711 approach was more befitting of a large metropolitan council or Wagga, a large regional council. They're the only council in this area that has that approach. We went with the 712 and because it was all encompassing. If we did a 711, you know, we'd need to ring fence areas off, so they would only be subject to the one form of levy. So we need to make sure everything's in that levy. It's not just open space, because you can't apply both the 711 and a 712 on the one development. So we went down that path. We can go down again and have a look, but that was the reasons back 5 or 6 years ago when we introduced developer contributions, that we went the more general path as most rural councils do.
Thank you, Mr Director. Further, so effectively the motion that's before us from Councillor Good and Councillor McLaren, if it was to pass, it's about investigating the possibility. So those sorts of things would be teased out, as well as associated costs if council went down that path. It's not this motion is not locking us into anything, but thank you. Further discussion, Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I wholeheartedly support this resolution. I've often felt large developments need to have the targeted public infrastructure to benefit the residents that are going to be living in that area, and our current policy allows their contributions through their future construction certificates and the 1%, they can be drawn away from that area and put somewhere else in town. So I think in the larger rezoning areas, I think it's really important to tie the benefits of public infrastructure to that location. So the 711 specifically insists that the money that's raised in that area goes for public infrastructure in that area. And I think that's only fair for the residents who pay it through the developer, who will recoup it through the sales, to have a park or some public infrastructure in their neck of the woods which they will pay for. I think the 712 has too much flexibility in the larger redevelopments because it does allow it to be whittled away, and although we can pool it all together and buy the land off the developer, but council has shown in the past that they've balked at spending hundreds of thousands of dollars buying land off a developer, and I think that we will miss the opportunity for more public open space if we don't go down this sort of a developer contribution plan, because we will always say it's too dear to buy the land off a developer under a 712. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor McLaren. I go now to Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, just one more thing. As pointed out by the Mayor, none of this is set in stone and it doesn't apply automatically, and I think it's just a handy thing to have in the quiver as a choice when rezoning decisions are being considered and developments are being considered. So it's nothing more than that at this point in time. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Irvine. Councillors, you have a motion. I have the town planner in further discussion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So just to give council a little bit more information about a 711 plan. So it is quite a detailed plan that has to have a lot of costed information in it, exactly what the particular projects are going to be delivered and how they are tied directly just to that neighbourhood. And like Councillor McLaren said, it would be specifically targeted just for that neighbourhood, so there'd be no contributions elsewhere in the Shire, like the main street or any stormwater projects. We would collect nothing from those areas. They would only have their money going towards those particular projects that we nominate. It is quite a complicated process to set up, and the situation that council is facing with the rezoning is that we've got the potential to do some upfront negotiation with these landholders prior to the rezoning, and council may wish to raise some concerns or some wishes for that design to perhaps include open space, and there may be an arrangement through a voluntary planning agreement that council may be able to achieve the same arrangement of some land coming into council's ownership and also having a particular project set up in our current developer contributions plan, like we've just done with Bradley Park, where we identify a cost of a project and that we can seek the developer contributions funds to be allocated towards delivering that project over time. So I think there are other options which we could consider that may still achieve what councillors may wish, but it might be more affordable option for council to consider.
Thank you, Madam Town Planner, and I'm sure that if this motion gets up, that would all form part of the report that would come to a future meeting of council. To wind up the debate, Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note the town planner, the voluntary planning instrument, but I think that if we had a 711 contribution there to say that either we have a 711 contribution or we do a voluntary planning agreement, they might come to the table quicker.
Thank you. That concludes the debate, and I'm going to put the motion to you, and that is on the motion of Councillor Good and Councillor McLaren that council investigate the possibility of introducing a developer contribution pursuant to section 11 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. And I'm going to put that motion to you now. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I declare that motion carried. Thank you, and we can have another debate in the future report. That comes in due course. Thank you very much for that. Let's go over to page 290, 16.3, notice of motion, informal and illegal housing. Councillor Irvine, do you wish to move your notice of motion, please, in those three parts?
Yes, I'd like to move the motion that Council conduct an investigation of the prevalence of the issue currently within Temora Shire. That's the issue of illegal housing or non-compliant housing. Seek any information from neighbouring councils as to the existence and scale of the issue or similar issues. And that council officers provide a report detailing the range of compliance actions available to council, and the report to contain an overview of previous 5 years compliance actions undertaken and further detail instances where council chose to take no action, obviously in a confidential nature.
Thank you. Councillor Irvine is moving that way. Is there a second for the motion, please? Is there a second for the motion? For the last time, is there a second for the motion? If not, the motion lapses for want of a seconder. Thank you. We go now over the page to 292, 16.4, notice of motion, heavy vehicle alternate route, existing network options. I declaring an interest and will leave the chamber and invite the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, to take the gavel. Thank you. And, sorry, noting Councillor Bushell is vacating.
I did at the start of the meeting.
Yes, you did, vacating the chamber as well. Thank you. Councillor
Mr. Mayor, I've declared an interest, but I don't believe I need to leave the chamber. My office is currently in the main street, so it's not a heavy vehicle route at the moment. It's not in the proposed alternate heavy vehicle routes. And the alternative heavy vehicle routes and the current heavy vehicle routes bypass a significant area of Temora, and I don't believe that because of those reasons I need to leave the chamber.
Thanks very much, Councillor Good. The Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, as well. I also live in the main street and have a business in the main street, so ditto for me, I guess. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I note those interests. Councillor Irvine, would you like to move your motion, please?
Yeah, I'd like to move a motion that council consider options for heavy vehicle route using the existing road network as detailed in an email circulated to councillors on the 26th of September 2022.
Okay, do I have a second for the motion? Do I have a second for the motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion seconded by Councillor Good. Discussion? Councillor Irvine?
This matter has come up obviously in consideration of the confidential discussions that council have held regarding alternative heavy vehicle bypasses of Temora, and I can't detail any of that here, of course. However, in my opinion, the likelihood of achieving the high cost solution of a heavy vehicle bypass outside Temora is limited at the moment, and I think the issue of heavy vehicle movements within the town aren't being addressed at present, and I think we need to look at some solutions that we could afford. And obviously this route is by no means the be-all and end-all. It's a start point for discussions. I sat down with the available information I had before me at the time, and I put together something that could conceivably work based on the information I had. I'm quite open to any suggestion and consideration of any other alternatives, and I think the main thing to consider here is that in the absence of council taking any action in this space, it is my fear that Transport for New South Wales will allocate that the major section of Hoskin Street Temora will become the nominated heavy vehicle route, and that will be the end of the matter.
Thanks. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. My starting point is my serious concern for the current heavy vehicle alternate route which goes at Cleverdens to the showground and back down Ashford Street. I've spoken to many farmers over the last few weeks about this route. I've witnessed trucks coming from the north having to stop halfway through the turn and wait for the car waiting there to reverse so they can get around. The turn, I followed a truck that was behind me, a road train. I followed him turning around the corner and then turning at the showground. There was another road train coming from the south, and those two were 2 seconds away from meeting at that turn, and the first truck had to go way over on the other side. So, and then there's a turn that turns into Ashleford Street, which is also more than 90 degrees. So there are 3 very tight turns where road trains have to go on the other side of the road to get around those turns. So from the truck drivers, the farmers that I've spoken to who have tried to improve their efficiency of operation by moving from a 2-trailer B-double to a 2-trailer road train. It's just the addition of a couple of extra axles to carry from 32 tonne up to 50 tonne. So it's a significant improvement in efficiency, farm gate efficiency. It means they only have to do 3 trips instead of 4, so there's a huge time gain. So they will, and the move is for more farmers to get into these 2-trailer road trains. That will be the most common farmer transport. If you're travelling 50 k's, time is money. So they're going to need a route to get to GrainCorp. So I don't know what the solution is, but I know that the current option does not suit those trucks as it stands, and one day someone's going to come sweeping around that corner and not see the little car and kill a granny waiting at the intersection. And then we'll have to do something. But it's not just 1 point, there's 3 points that are dangerous. Thank you.
Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I too have similar concerns, as with both the previous speakers. At the moment, Singleton is having a bypass. It's gone out to tender, and it's $700 million for an 8-kilometre bypass. That's close to $100 million a kilometre. That sort of money is... I can't see local or federal state or federal government stumping up that sort of money for a bypass here, particularly with what's the roads and various other priorities they have for their money at the moment. I agree with Councillor Irvine that this is not the be-all and end-all, and I think we don't need to do a whole bypass. If there are certain areas that we can improve, then I think we need to look at those particular areas. But I also agree with him that if we don't do something, then Transport for New South Wales will state this is where it's going to happen, and we won't have a choice. And I think that's going to be sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Councillor Good. Councillor Good, did happen to know where Singleton was getting their funding from to do what they're doing?
If I might, the federal government are allocating 560 million of that, and the state government are allocating the other 140 million of that. Now, the Singleton bypass is obviously an extreme example, and there must obviously be terrain, infrastructure and other considerations that they have to overcome to come to a budget of that scale. But that has just recently been announced, and they've shortlisted the tenderers. So they're at an advanced stage of that project, and it is an extraordinary amount of money. But just to add some context to the current costings of these type of pieces of infrastructure, they're currently doing a Newell Highway bypass at Parks. The project was costed at 169 million. It was let at 187. Since they've started the project, they've hit naturally occurring asbestos, and they haven't factored in the inherent cost increases that have occurred over the last 12 to 18 months. So you'd expect that that cost will climb significantly, and they're already at 187 million for a north-south bypass around Parks. So the project in Temora's scale hasn't been costed, but you've got to expect that it's going to be, to do the job properly, would be in the at least 100 million, maybe the hundreds of millions. So that's something to consider. And just on another infrastructure note, the Wallenbean Bridge has just been announced and the project cost on that, and they've just said that they're doing some road realignment and they're widening the bridge to accommodate for safe passing of heavy vehicles, and that project is going out at 30 million. And that's for a bridge without huge significant roadworks. So this stuff comes at a massive price tag, and my only concern is this has been on the table for 20 to 25 years as a bypass, and I still support the bypass. Let me put that on the record right now. I support the bypass idea. I just don't think it's a realistic option for us in the short to medium term, and I feel that we need to consider something with the existing road network that may be afforded to allow us to at least deal with the issues that are presenting at the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Just back to Councillor McLaren's point about farmers and their road trains. Just to the engineer, wouldn't most of those come under the PP? Was it the short one at Main Street?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, or filling Mayor, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to call you. No, they won't. So at the moment, you get a road train permit for lengths up to 36.5 metres. So if you've got a shorter combination than 36.5, it still fits under the conventional road train permit. The current configuration that does go down Hoskin Street at the moment is a PBS level 2B vehicle, which is basically a performance-based standards vehicle, which goes through specific testing, and there's some rules. PBS level 2B means that they can't be longer than 30 metres. So, you're seeing lots of major freight companies go to PBS level 2B, and that's because they get access into Sydney and Brisbane and Melbourne. But yeah, I can't see that happening out in the bush.
Yep. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Irvine. McLaren, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question to the director, the manager. Do those PBS vehicles have to have the black box tracker in them to do that, which is thousands of dollars?
Listen, I can't 100% say, but I would think they're under the IAP scheme, and I would think that the PBS assessment process would be very expensive.
Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I consider any discussion there on this possible routes, and I hate to use the word, but it probably should be referred to a workshop in the new year. I'm still keen to see our options we looked at before be further developed. We had a meeting recently with our state member, Steph Cook, and the member said that, as a council and as a community, we should really decide, what we're going to do. And I think we've got to reach some stage, and I think hopefully in the first half of next year, put out to the community what our preferred options are, so the community can comment. And I think that's what I'd like to propose, that this and our other options be referred to a workshop in the new year. But anyway.
Okay, I think we've probably had enough discussion. There's a motion in front of you. It's been moved and seconded.
I'll move an amendment then that this proposal and the further discussion on the alternate routes be referred to a workshop in the first quarter of 23.
Okay. The mover like to add that we would prepare that, add that to your motion, or do you?
I'm quite happy to add that to my motion and to save the amendment.
But everyone, you're happy with that? If that's everyone happy with that, well, so. No, adding it to.
Add to the motion.
Add it to your motion. the workshop be conducted. Yeah, the workshop be conducted in the new year on the options for heavy vehicle routes. Is that's to cover it, Councillor Judd? Okay. Is everyone happy with that motion as it is? Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. I'm happy to have further discussions in the first quarter of next year, but I am certainly opposed to sending heavy vehicles down residential streets that are filled with kids and oldies, etc., built up areas. I think there are possibly better ways to do something than what's before us at the moment or what we've had previously. But yeah, I'm certainly opposed to sending heavy vehicles down residential areas. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Oliver. Okay, there's no further comments. So I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Call the Mayor back in, please. Just in your absence, Mr Mayor and Councillor Bushell, that the motion was was moved with the addition that a workshop be conducted in the early year on the options available.
The options available. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Councillors, let's go to page 294, 16.5, Notice of Motion, Post Office Bank. Councillor Irvine, do you wish to move this motion that council support a campaign for a public post office bank in Australia?
Yes, I'd like to move that motion.
Thank you. This bloody pen. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councillor Irvine.
It's a common topic that we discuss at a regular basis as to the service levels provided by the major banking providers in Australia. There is a significant infrastructure asset available through the post office service. The Australian Citizens Party have put forward some proposals in relation to this. I don't see any risk to council whatsoever by supporting this and allowing these people to move forward with our support to pursue this. I think it could deliver great benefits to the smaller communities, and I think Temora's not that far off having real issues with getting banking services on a regular basis either here. I've contacted the guys and got, I think Wagga City Council have put a motion to support this as well. Recently there were, just let me find the email if I might, I just asked for the most current list of councils that had supported. Here's the email here. So currently in New South Wales, Narrabri Shire, Cobar Shire, Strathfield City and Wagga Wagga City have supported this motion, or a motion to this extent. On the agenda this week is Byron Shire and Ballina Shire. And in Queensland there's 3 shires, in WA there's a couple, and South Australia, Cooper Pedy. So it's not a massive movement as yet, but it's got to start somewhere. And I think if we wait for the big banks to show their compassionate side, we might be waiting for a little while.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Further discussion, Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Having come from a little community, Barmedman, who's just lost their post office, that's the last, person out of the bar really when the post office goes. So I think a lot of small communities will still have a post office, and if we can provide banking services through those post offices with a existing infrastructure, I think a lot of small communities will benefit. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McLaren. Go to Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My concern with this motion is that the post office currently provide banking services for 3 of the 4 big banks, the ANZ Bank are not included, and numerous other smaller banks where you can deposit, withdraw money, and just have some banking services, not a great deal, but at least some. And if the post office do go forward and have their own bank, then those services will be withdrawn by those other banks because of the competition, and then we potentially will lose further services for many other banks with the benefit of getting one bank, which may not offset what's going to be lost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Good. We'll go to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Yes, Mayor, on the face of it, it does sound good, and for some communities it probably will be, but in the case of Temora, we've still got 3 of our banks here, even though they're having issues too. But I think if this is to come in, this gives an out for the major banks, to get, like, they're looking for excuses or opportunities to close down, obviously in the banks in the smaller towns, and I think this would just give them the out to do that. Plus the other side of it, most of the post offices I see are, in country towns are quite small and usually pretty well packed out. To offer these sort of services in the facilities they've already got, I think would be very difficult. They'd probably need to extend the buildings or move to a closed bank or something. And then, of course, they've got to have staff to go with it. So, well, I see that there's a positive side to it. I can see there could be a negative side to it too.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Councillors, other comments or views? I tend to agree with Councillor Good and the Deputy Mayor. I don't support the motion that's before us for the reasons that have already been articulated. I can understand if there was a situation where banks had genuinely left the community. I think obviously it would make perfect sense, but that's my view. So, councillors, if there's no further discussion, I'm going to put the motion that's before you, that council support a campaign for a public post office bank in Australia, moved by Councillor Irvine, seconded Councillor McLaren. So all those of that opinion, please raise your hand. All those to the contrary, I declare the motion lost. Thank you very much. Councillors, we go over to page 296, 16.6, notice of motion. Councillor Irvine, you wish to move that motion, please?
Yeah, I'd like to move the motion that council provide a risk assessment for the permitted road train AB triple route from Hoskin Street to Polaris Street. In particular, details of any risk associated with the boom-gated rail crossing, and details of any risk associated with the unboom-gated rail crossing, and details of any risks that may arise when permitted vehicles travelling in opposite directions are required to navigate the particular turns on the route at the same time, and details as to location, safety and risk with regards to the give-way holding lines, and also detail to be provided with regards to the cycleway, local parking, local residents access and egress and any other relevant matters.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor McLaren, thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion?
Well, just to follow on from Councillor McLaren's conversation.
Well, Councillor Irvine, you'll wait till you have the call. Thank you. Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr Chairman. My worry with doing risk assessments on like this is the trouble is the fair chance that we're not going to get a very good report. And I think you go back to the old thing about you do a report, what are the unintended consequences, and I can see that probably all the alternatives of sending trucks around away from the main street will end up only one alternative, that's to send them down the main street. So that's my worry.
Thank you very much, Councillor Judd. Councillor Irvine.
I can't really follow Councillor Judd's logic in that ignoring a risk because you can't come up with an alternative is probably acceptable.
Well, I don't think, Councillor Irvine, I don't think that Councillor Judd was suggesting that ignore at all. I think it was just pointing out that some of the issues, as he see it, associated with considering the motion.
Well,
Councillor Irvine.
As discussed, I think investigation of these matters has raised with local residents a number of risks and users of this route, a number of risks that perhaps haven't been identified or given perhaps the credence that they deserve. It has been noted that this route is receiving significantly more traffic than it received when it was originally put forward, and I think it's high time that the risks were considered, because I think failure to do so is unacceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. I go to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I can see this being a very expensive report. It's not something that's going to be done in a short time frame, and I would think this is well outside our staff to be able to do this, or that may be wrong. But the other thing is, we've just had a motion to look at the options for this, so I think this is a bit premature, really. I think we need to wait till after we've, at least after we have this our workshop in early next year to see whether this is going to be relevant or not.
Thanks, Mr Deputy Mayor. Councillor Bushell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Sinclair just said exactly what I was going to say. So I think we're putting the cart before the horse. Let's do this workshop. Let's see what it results. And I also value what Councillor Judd said about when we know a risk, there are lots of implications. So I agree on that one. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bushell. I go to Councillor McLaren.
Just reiterating what I said earlier, but I also think I think knowledge is power, and I think having this information informs our workshop. It may identify some risks where we can engineer some solutions for. It may mean we can modify this route and not have to worry about another route. So I think having a close look at the existing alternate route for risks isn't a bad thing. I think I'd like to know whether the manager feels that this is within council's time and skill set to do this with in-house or what. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McLaren. The engineering engineering assets manager.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So what I'd say is we can do a basic risk assessment, but I doubt it will provide council with the level of information and detail that they would want. I guess a similar scenario that I've seen recently would be where we obtained a quotation for a risk assessment around the preschool and down Anzac Street, and it was in the order of 10,000, and council chose not to fund it.
Thank you, Mr Manager. I go to Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If I could have a question to the engineering assets manager. If we were to, at our workshop, come up with a preferred route, would Transport for New South Wales do a risk assessment based on our preferred route?
Thank you, Councillor Good. Go to the assets engineer.
I doubt. So I think if an alternate was to be considered, it would become the permit route, and then it's up to the respective road manager to look after their their particular section of that. So any connection with the state road would fall under Transport for New South Wales responsibility, and then any risk on the local road network outside of intersections with the state road or the state road itself would fall back to council. And I don't believe that they would do, unless we requested, and they don't generally do that stuff themselves, I don't reckon. I reckon they outsource it.
Thank you. Go to the you're right. Thank you. Councillors, you have a motion before you. Councillor Irvine and Councillor McLaren have moved it. On page 296, items 1 through to 5. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please raise your hands. To the contrary, declare the motion lost. Thank you very much. Councillors, we go over to page 298 of business without notice of an urgent nature. And I will start. Councillor Bushell. Happy? Thank you. Councillor Good. Happy? Councillor Irvine.
Is this in relation to the correspondence?
No, this is urgent business without notice.
No.
You're happy? Thank you. Go to Councillor Judd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did admit in delegations I did represent council at the retirement of Greg Matthews, the fire chief in Temora. It was a very good send-off for Greg. Greg had spent 45 years in the fire service in Temora, and many of those years as the captain. So anyway, it was a great send-off for Greg, and we expressed our appreciation for the work he's put into looking after Temora and the community. My second...
And just pardon me, Councillor Judd, thank you very much for representing council at that occasion. I know that you're honoured to go, and I know you had to adjust your schedule as well to be there, but I know that it meant a lot to Mr Matthews and his colleagues. Right. So thank you. Councillor Judd.
On the 10th November, we held a sewerage discussion meeting in Area Park, and it was very good attendance, with probably 60, 70 people packing the supper room at the hall. I must commend our assets manager and our town planner for attending and addressing the meeting. Thank you to Councillor McLaren for coming across as well and being there. She was trying to be crowd control that night. But so it's a fairly positive meeting, and I think the town planners are going to do further reports for probably a future meeting. But it's a bit hard to know which way it's going to go yet. But so the town planner's going to provide more information, and we'll go from there. But other than that, it was very good to see a good response. Everyone's very keen on the issue. So, and my third point is that we held a meeting last week with the Grants Commission, and there was some discussion which the Grants Commission brought up about our request through ALGA and other LG New South Wales about trying to get either 1% part of the government funding or 30%. Now, there seems to be a lot of confusion about, and they reported that ALGA's been had a different attitude at different years. I'm just wondering whether our general manager could give us a report on which way we should go in the future. Like we've been arguing this and that, and sort of the Grants Commission sort of threw all that thing up in the air, I think. And I think I'd like to see a bit of report done on so we can work out our policy going forward. You know?
Thank you. Councillor Judd, I think that's a very, very wise motion, because I'm going to accept that as an urgent motion, that council receive a report in relation to our consideration of the our position in relation to FAGs.
Yes.
FAGs, federal assistance grants, and associated matters.
Yes.
How's that gone? How do we go with that? Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Councillor McLaren has seconded the motion. Discussion. There's no further discussion. We'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare that motion carried. Thank you, Councillor Judd.
That's all, thanks.
Thank you very, very much. Councillor McLaren, business without notice of an urgent nature.
Yes, following on from the Grants Commission meeting last week, they were talking about the per capita funding application. At the end of their assessment, they have to apply the minimum per capita, and it's 30%, I think, was what they were talking about. One of the commissioners mentioned that it's up to us to lobby, because often that reduces what we get and ensures that larger councils get more funds, which they don't necessarily need. So, taking what he was suggesting, that I'd like to move that we write to the federal government to lobby to amend the Act to give state grant commissioners the discretion to apply the per capita percentage in a range from 10 to 30%, rather than the fixed 30%.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaren, can I suggest to you that you're writing to the federal government, that we write to our federal member?
Correct?
Yeah, for Riverina.
Yes.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. But they requested that state grant commissioners, because
Yes.
Western Australia would still like to retain the 30%,
Yes.
but they'd like to have the flexibility to go down to 10%
that's right.
to give us more money in the regional areas.
Yeah, that was certainly that certainly, Councillor McLaren, was not the formal
No, it
advice
was
that
not
they
their
gave us,
formal.
but
It was strong
there was
sense in the
an
wind.
undertone.
There was an undertone, that's correct.
Our distinguished friend from the press, I'm sure, will use discretion.
Yes. We got the vibe.
Yes, we did get the vibe. As the director...
So is that a motion?
Yes, so we're going to take that as an urgent, because it is, as far as I'm concerned, deemed urgent.
I'm sure the general manager can help me with this, because I think he knows what I'm talking about. But they,
It was to write to
The general manager.
yes, it was to write to the our local federal member, requesting consideration for the change of the Commonwealth Grants Commission Act to allow flexibility in the per capita contribution from 10 to 30%.
in the range of 10.
In the range.
Yeah.
He just made that up. He hasn't written anything down there. No, he has written. So, Councillor McLaren, are you happy? That captures the essence of... And again, the grants commissioners that were with us did not suggest that we do this. We're reading between the lines.
Correct.
Thanks, Councillor McLaren. Councillor Judd, you've seconded the motion. Moved and seconded. There's further discussion. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Nothing further, Councillor McLaren? Thank you. Councillor Oliver, you're happy? Thank you. Councillor Reinhold? Happy? Thank you. The Deputy Mayor? Happy? Thank you. I just had... I wanted to just mention to you, I whilst in Sydney last week on the Thursday, we had the New South Wales JO Joint Chairman's Forum. We heard from Minister Tuckerman in relation to JOs, and the Shadow Minister, Mr. Warren, Greg Warren, in relation to JOs. Minister Tuckerman indicated that she realised that there's 4 now that have bitten the dust across the state out of the 13. Oh, sorry, have gone into hiatus and gone back to their rock. And I asked her the question of what her intentions were going forward, and her response was, well, we want to try and come up with a way that we can encourage these regions back to the JO fold. And then Mr. Warren spoke after that, and I asked him the same question, and he was again consistent with his policy position, which he'll announce in February. He's advised that he is a strong believer, as a former mayor and councillor himself, and an ex-serviceman, that he does not believe in a one-size-fits-all model, that he believes that if a region and member councils believe a JO is appropriate for them, that's excellent, and those that believe a ROC is best, or an alliance, or whatever legitimate collaborative group, then he would facilitate that within the confines of the Act or a regulation. So that was met with a round of applause. And so I just thought I'd share that with council. And the last two things, councillors, that I do raise that I just want to place on record, council's deepest sympathy on the loss of our most senior citizen, Mr. Ron McGuirk, who passed away recently at 104, and our prayers and thoughts are with Mr. McGuirk's family, and also a gentleman that spent a lot of time in this chamber, and I know that many of you would have worked with him in either through council or through your other public life roles, is Mr. Alan Bent, of course, who we've advised that has passed away as well, and again sitting as regular feature up at the back on the press desk. So again, our thoughts and our prayers are extended to Mrs. Bent and her family, and also we extend that to Mr. Wilson and your colleagues at the Temora Independent. We know that he was a much respected figure. So I wanted to note those two this evening. Thank you. If there's no further business without notice, I motion to receive the information paper, please. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Reinhold, moved, seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Any items? Councillor Bushell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to firstly talk about the town hall figures. Surprisingly, so that's on page 322.
Thank you. 322.
Just want to congratulate the staff for getting the expenditure down compared to previous years. In the areas of cleaning, employee costs, all those types of things. So very well noted, and the usage has gone up. And the other one that I wanted to note was on page 310 in the Rangers report, under other. Have you got any details regarding checked goats at hospital, Mayor?
Thank you, Councillor Bushell. In relation to goats at Temora District Hospital, I understand that the hole in which they were escaping has now been repaired, and we're very grateful for that. Councillor Bushell.
And thank you. Just one more thing on page 308. I noticed that there's some movement in Area Park, 2 more transportable dwellings, which is very exciting to see. So well done, Area Park. Hopefully they're vacant lots that are getting occupied.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Bush, and all those points, except for the billy goat one, is very much appreciated. Any other items in the information paper? Councillor McLaren.
Just to note, in the Sports Council report, the swimming club, they've already raised almost $20,000. This is above the 24,000 starting blocks that the Shire purchased for the club. So they're really doing some serious fundraising to go with this pool, and I commend them.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McLaren, and I think the Chamber endorses those remarks. I think you just really enjoy seeing those help themselves, and you want to help them as well as much as we can. Thank you. Councillor Irvine.
In the Rangers report on page 312, we've got a major issue recorded there with a rural stock incident. Is there any info available on that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Question without notice to the Director of Environmental Services. You can take it on notice if...
Mr. Mayor, that occurred while I was on annual leave, so I'm not exactly sure.
Take that on notice. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Irvine.
And just a question in relation to the minutes on the Sports Council. There's reference to a incident. Will we get a report on that?
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Mr. General Manager. Where are we talking? Page the Sports Council starting at page 330. The executive, so under the executive meeting report. It's a sensitive issue, but it's one that I understand that it's, the clubs are handling it. The General Manager.
Probably, yeah, given that the clubs have asked that it remain private and confidential, I'm probably happy to talk about it in confidential. It hasn't had a lot to do with us, but
No.
it's certainly an issue that the two clubs have been dealing with.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. If there's nothing further information paper, in accordance with section 10A of the Local Government Act 1993, I advise that there are several matters that are deemed confidential, and accordingly I require a motion to have those matters considered. Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Councillor Reinhold moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. In closed session. Thank you, councillors. We resume into open council and advise that the following motions have been brought forward from closed session into open session. On the motion of Councillor McLaren and Councillor Reinhold, council moved into confidential session at 7 p.m. Minutes of the Assets and Operations Committee meeting held on the 15th of November 2022 on the motion of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair and Councillor Bushell, it was resolved that the reports be received and the motion was carried. On the motion of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair and Councillor McLaren, in relation to item REP 22-1320, Council endorsed a decision made by email regarding the purchase of the 3-axle dog trailer and the motion was carried. On the motion of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair and Councillor Bushell, it was resolved that the reports and recommendations as presented be adopted and the motion was carried. The minutes of the Economic Development Visitations Committee held on the 15th of November 2022 on the motion of Councillor McLaren and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that the reports be received and the motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Bushell and Councillor Good, it was resolved that the reports and recommendations as presented be adopted and the motion was carried. Minutes of the Risk Management Committee meeting held on the 7th of November 2022 on the motion of Councillor Irvine and Councillor Good, it was resolved that the reports be received and the motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Bushell and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that the reports and recommendations as presented be adopted and the motion was carried. Apollo Place Development, Councillor McLaren declared a non-pecuniary interest to being a committee member of Dr Parry Holmes and left the meeting at 7:17 p.m. On the motion of Councillor Good and the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, it was resolved that Council sell the property for the nominated amount, repayable over 5 years, interest-free, and the motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Irvine and Councillor Judd, the amendment that I beg your pardon. There was an amendment to that motion from Councillor Irvine and Councillor Judd that Council focus on cost recovery only with the removal of grants and that we negotiate with the developer curb and guttering costs and Council cover costs of road upgrade. The amendment was lost. The motion was put and carried. Councillor McLaren returned to the chamber at 7:37 p.m. On the motion of the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair and Councillor Reinhold, it was resolved that Council moves the motions from closed session into open council and the motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Reinhold and Councillor Good, it was resolved that Council moves out of closed council and into open session at 7:56 p.m. and the motion was carried. Is someone please move that those motions be formally adopted? Thank you, Councillor Good. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no, and declare the motion carried. Thank you. Is there any other urgent items before Council? If Councillor Irvine.
Tidy up that loose end, that information requested of the Director of Environmental Services regarding the Ranger report, that information be furnished at a later date?
Yes, fine enough.
Thank you, tomorrow.
Thank you. There being no further business, I do thank you very, very much for your attendance, for your input, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.